here to cause trouble, are you?
Scenery, if you like, was very, very important. So the interiors were vital.
Watching something naughty?
Do you know why I never come home?
Educate me.
Because there isn't enough air in New York for anyone but you!
This film is really a love letter to New York from me.
Need you.
The only way out of 960 is in a box.
Hi, I'm Paula Benson, founder and editor of Film and Furniture, and today on the Film and Furniture podcast, we step inside the layered, emotionally charged world of Park Avenue, written and directed by Gaby Dellal. Set almost entirely within an elegant Upper East Side apartment, Park Avenue is a beautifully textured story of family, memory and reconciliation between a mother and a daughter, played by Fiona and Katherine Waterston. In this episode, Gaby and I discuss how her twin passions for storytelling and interior design come together on screen. It's like it was almost made for us, where furniture, colour and texture speak just as loudly as dialogue. This episode works just as well without visuals, but just so you know, it's a video podcast, so you can watch along for the full experience. And just a heads up, this interview contains spoilers. So welcome, Gaby Dellal, to the Film and Furniture podcast. And in your latest film, Park Avenue, you bring your dual talents of storytelling and interior design into vivid focus. So set in predominantly in New York, in a Park Avenue apartment belonging to Kit, played brilliantly by Fiona. We have this amazing space which is full of layers and textures, and you also run your own interior design studio. So can you tell us about how you balance being a writer, a director, you've been an actress and an interior designer?
Well, hi, thanks for having me on the show. So to be fair, I do mainly kitchens. I'm a bit of a foodie. I do the kitchens with my son, and it's called Create Studio, and we work here in the UK. So, making films is very difficult and very time consuming. So balancing the two kind of gives you time in between. And often my producer would call me and say, we need to talk, and I'd be fitting a kitchen, and she'd fall about laughing. And I'd say, no, you don't understand the great pleasure I get from creating a kitchen. So it's very creative to do interior design. I try not to do the whole house. I try and sort of just keep it to a kitchen. And so Park Avenue is all set in an apartment. It's meant to be a family home. I had a wonderful production designer called Katie Fleming, who loved the script and had to get right into the nitty-gritty of it, and for us to both collaborate on what was a very low budget film. So we had to, it's not like in Hollywood where you get huge movies where you get as much money as you like to play with. You have to really think on your feet. But it's also a fantastic benefit because you are able to draw on old things and make it very familial and home-like, which was the point of the film. It's about Fiona, who's at home quietly wanting to die, and her daughter turns up unexpected and uninvited back to the family home. And I think it's that landscape and the vestiges of the past that then bring up the truths that have been hidden for all those years. So the landscape of the scenery, if you like, was very, very important. So the interiors were vital, and they had to contrast with the exteriors, which was New York City. So this film is really a love letter to New York from me, and it's all on the Upper East Side. But it's also not my home territory. So it's a lot what I imagine from the past, and Breakfast at Tiffany's and those old-fashioned films that inspired me. to make a film. And actually, one of the films that inspired me was I Am Love by Luca Guadagnino. And he too, it's the only reason I'm transparent about making kitchens, is because he too does interiors. So I think they do go hand in hand if you have a great visual sense, which I believe I do, and which part of making cinema and making theatre, because I also do that, part of the attraction is the production design and the production value that I think in all my films I've managed to encompass so that it never looks kind of cheap. And this was a very expensive apartment. This was about the sort of upper echelons of New York society, in which Fiona Shaw plays the mum from Irish descent. But it was very important. What was most important is the colours. So I really start from what colour I want my film to be. And in this case, the colour, it wasn't really a question of colour. It was a question of getting her costumes and her persona to pop against the background. And it was one day when I and Katie together we were inspired by the idea of having very dark walls so that her sort of satin pajamas when she gets ill could really pop. And I wanted her to have red hair, and so her red hair really popped. So you have to be really careful when you're designing across film, theatre, and people's homes to not put too much. So in order for the eye to focus on the subject. And the subject in our case was mainly Fiona. So that's the beginning of the production design. Finding the house was very, very difficult because we weren't able to build it. We had to find a film-friendly apartment in New York City, which is very hard. We had to make it seem like it was on the Upper East Side, which it certainly wasn't, because we couldn't afford one of those apartments. So we ended up getting a really horrible, grotty, thick painted apartment, thick white paint, old apartment that no one would have wanted to live in, that we ended up having to spend a fortune, by the way, to rent. They wouldn't have got $2 for it in the state that they gave it to us. But what it did have is interconnecting rooms, which allowed for the camera and allowed for Fiona to be in different kind of states within her kind of home and final resting place. So that was very important to us. And once we'd found that location, which had her kind of workspace, ACA dining room, her sitting area, and then her fireplace room, we just started to roll. And then it was about the textures on the walls. And a lot of the stuff came actually from my house and from my family's house. So it had its natural patterner. So, for instance, she does spend quite a lot of the film right at the end when she's in bed, or there are at least 3 scenes in her bedroom. And there's a very dilapidated, dirty pink silk bedhead, which is actually mine. But we would pick and choose. And because this is based largely on a woman I met in Central Park and all the older women I love in the world and my own mother, I had a very distinct idea of how she would dress. And the dressing and the costumes were really important. And so the background had to complement it.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of layering and lots of texture, and you've answered all my questions in your first.
Oh, yeah.
But
yeah.
Just going back a bit though, you live in London. I believe you spend time in Cornwall as well. So why New York? Why Park Avenue? I mean, you've said that you wanted a love letter to New York, but why did you want to set this film there?
Because the film I made before this was called 3 Generations, and it was about 3 generations of women who where the youngest wants to become a boy. And it was set in New York City, but it was set downtown. And one day I was on set, and Elle Fanning, who was playing the young girl who wanted to transition and become a trans boy, was called Ramona at the start of the film. And I needed a doorman to say, "Hi, Ramona," when she comes home one day. And then Elle would say, "I'm Ray, I'm not Ramona anymore." And it was a really simple thing. And I asked the producers, I said, can we have a doorman? And they said, no, we can't afford a doorman. It's too last minute. And anyway, downtown, we don't have doormen. And so I was so angry that they wouldn't help me out. I said, I'm going to make a doorman film next. And so that was what started the wheels, the cogs going in my head, which was I wanted to make something not downtown, so it had to be uptown. But I love New York so much. And I wanted to make a doorman film because I've always been interested in the doormen that guard those incredible buildings. And it's a culture that we in the UK don't have. So I'm always intrigued by different cities. And do you live in a house? Do you live in an apartment building? So New York has always been fascinating to me. And I only first came to New York when I was 15. And I was mad about breakfast at Tiffany's. And I stayed on the Upper East Side because at that time in the 80s, Studio 54 and the trendy area was all up in the 50s. And downtown was not cool and the Bowery was not cool. And so it was nice to visit it again because now, you can get much cheaper accommodation on the Upper East Side than you can downtown. So that's what inspired me. And I was living in New York and I love it there. And I live downtown. But I have large dogs, so I would go every day on the subway to Central Park. And that's where I met this amazing woman in Central Park called Kit, who inspired me to write this film.
I see. And the doorman plays such a beautiful role in this film. It's a bit of a triangle, really, isn't it? But
Yes.
so I was thinking as I was watching it, I want to live somewhere with a doorman because I suddenly realized it's very sociable, actually, isn't it? So he's like a linchpin for the whole sort of community within an apartment block and, becomes a friend, a supporter. And then particularly in this case, in Park Avenue, he becomes really central to how the characters relate to each other. And he has this, he's in charge of this beautiful, the sound of the film comes across to me as well. I don't know how much of it is real and how much of it is actually created in sound effects, but the sound of feet on marble. And there's that scene actually where, she's sort of jangling her keys and they start sort of mini tap dancing. The sound of that space is wonderful, and the marble and the texture. Talk to us about the way that sort of that space works as a transitory space for people to kind of ambiently meet.
Yeah, and well, thank you for all that because took a lot of time. I also spent a lot of time in my own apartment because those large buildings that people live in, especially the old ones, have a whole phonic world of their own. And you hear all the pipes, mostly the pipes are exposed or in corners, even in quite grand upmarket apartments, and there's a general heating system, so you hear all the water going through the water pipes and the water system, and they make extraordinary noises. So I would constantly just on my phone record all the noises in my building. And that was one of the things that really excited me is the life that it's got the building 960 Park Avenue is a character in the movie. And so that's its voice, if you like. And then I was it took a very long time finding that lobby. And it obviously wasn't the real lobby to the apartment that we had. And we only had 3 days to shoot in it. But I went to visit so many lobbies, and most of them are always black and white and smaller, much smaller. And this was up in the 160s, and it was the most amazing lobby, all white marble, and so absolutely beautiful. And as you can imagine, it had this echoey, which sometimes went against us, but which I then took advantage of. So particularly when she finally tells her daughter, and I don't want to reveal the secret that she's been harboring for 40 years about her own husband and the daughter's father, she carries a stiff upper lip, and the daughter barely breaks down. But when they're separate, the daughter remains in the house, and Kit goes and finds umbrage with her friend, who is the doorman. And she goes to that communal, beautiful space. And it's there that she finally breaks down. And it was very, very hard to create the silence to just hear her walking, barely able to walk, tap, tap, tap. And even though we had shoes that made that noise, the sound designer had to spend, and I just kept on saying, it's not good enough. It's not good enough. I want the steps to be absolutely crisp. And we'd have to do Foleys to get them exactly right, so that when she does break down, it's even more devastating. And when the doorman comes in, she claims she's just sad to see the piano go. And of course, she's not. It's just she doesn't know how to emote in front of anyone. And then it's the daughter ends up having resuming a naughty relationship that she'd had when she was 20, when she was a precocious 18-year-old in the building with the handsome doorman when he was 21. She kind of resumes it. And that drives her mother mad because A, her mother knows what she's up to, and B, her mother's never had an affair with the doorman, but he is her last gentleman caller. So he's her friend. And her daughter turning up is just kind of bombarding her way and eclipsing the moments that Kit needed with a kind of objective friend. And so that little tap dance, some people love, I love, some people said, oh, take it out, is their lovemaking.
Yeah.
And it's just him not being able to get a smile out of her all night. So she's been up all night. She doesn't want to go back to the apartment. The apartment's brought her so much grief. And she has this little moment of solace and comfort in the lobby with the doorman. And it's very, very late. And it's his way of trying to get a little laugh out of her. And it's cheeky. And it shows that they have this beautiful symbiosis. And then the daughter, of course, turns up, and there's just the ping of the lift coming down and the doors opening, and the daughter said bedtime. So it's like their roles have changed, like inevitably they do with our parents, where we become the grown up and they become the child. So it was really about exploring and exploiting that moment.
Before we return to my conversation with Gaby Dellal, a quick word about some of the stunning design pieces featured in Park Avenue. Kit's apartment brings sophisticated storytelling through design. Luxurious, dark painted walls, delicate ceramics, and a collection of artworks and textures that feel both refined and deeply personal. For example, you'll find an Eames lounge chair and ottoman, a timeless symbol of comfort and modern craftsmanship. And if you're inspired by Kit's world of tactile elegance as much as I am, think rich colour palettes, soft lamplight, and rooms layered with art and memory. You can find a curation of pieces from Park Avenue, as well as other pieces inspired by the film's design, in our marketplace at filmandfurniture.com. Find links in the show description below. It's a lot about objects, identity, relationships between people, but because this is film and furniture, I really picked up on how the relationship with objects is so important for sharing identity. And we see it right from the beginning of the film when Charlotte leaves her husband and she's packing a few sacred pieces like the mask, the Chinese mask, and some photos, I think, and some pencils. And she, so we know from the beginning that objects are important to her as a person and clearly important to you. And then that follows through for when she gets home, and she's sort of recalling her childhood experiences in the apartment. And you do that through the carpet. So she remembers the carpet as a kid. And then as she gets home, you see the carpet again, looking a little slightly older. I loved that. That's a really kind of story of time through an object. I thought that was great. So talk us through the apartment. It's so layered, it's so textured, and your love of objects is so clear. We see, brightly coloured, jewel-coloured ceramic bowls, and then we see fabulous glass decanters and the Chinese masks, which clearly are about identity in itself. So could you talk us through some of your favourite objects in this amazing apartment?
Well, I love that you've picked all this up. So because it's about a mother-daughter, I wanted to reflect families repeat habits repeat through generations. So you meet her, Charlotte, and she's packing up pencils and she's packing up her favorite rug, and then she takes the mask that her father gave her. Then you arrive at the apartment and you see that there are many masks, and they talk about it straight away. So that's number one. Number two, she's kept her pencils because she also draws just like her mother. So then you see that her mother paints. And by the way, Fiona Shaw insisted on doing her own painting. So she painted, when she was painting, it was her painting. So she wasn't pretending to paint.
Okay.
Then there were all these very beautifully painted, almost like drawing portraits, which this wonderful artist who I know lent us all those pictures, but they're all women. And they're very beautiful with very little colour, but they worked really well going down the very dark corridor. And so all those things, even towards the when the daughter recognizes that her mother doesn't walk very well, she adds gold handles down the small corridor, so that was all in honor of doing the last scene, which is when she gets home from the hospital. She drops her bag, like when you've been exhausted in a horrible hospital for days, and we realize it's curtains when she holds and she walks down holding on to the handles on the corridor. That's really significant. But also you see the ring that her mother is so significant on her mother, that really cool big Tibetan ring. And you see it now. The daughter's obviously taken it off in the hospital and taken it for herself. The other thing is, if you see, so she wears a Missoni kind of cardigan, the daughter does, but she's stolen it from her mum. And so at the end, when there's that beautiful scene when the mother's kind of lost her way and is just wearing, she's got her Missoni sort of cardigan back on and she lets it drop. So it's about them sharing objects and having, what you do with your mothers, you just take. So what's yours is mine, and it's that. And then, you know, she really cares, so that I always wanted that very silent scene when after the huge row, when she said, you know why I never come home, because New York's not big enough, you know, and she screams at her mother, and then it's silence the next day and the mother's in the kitchen and there's all that beautiful crockery. But I wanted to start the scene off completely silent, and then slowly sound came back in. It's like you can't hear, and then the daughter just starts putting toast and butter on the toast, and then the mother very distinctly puts the butter top back on the dish. So it's all the things that irritate us that we're allowed, that we're entitled to do at home.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, that also I wanted piles to feel the antiquity of this familial home, which in my head, and you don't get it, was given down to Fiona from her father. So it was the apartment she'd grown up in too. So it just had stacks of things on the desk, so that when you first see her, she's been writing a memoir and there's just books and her paints are on there. And so it really builds a whole history. And Katie, my production designer, was really brilliant at collecting stuff, and she called me out to say, I found this, and what do you think of these on the, you know, so it was a real collaboration of trying to identify the character and the character's history through its objects and through the familiarity when the daughter comes home. So when she's in her own room, you know, there's still, I don't know, there's scene, she's mad about David Bowie, and there's old David Bowie, you know, she wears a t-shirt. So it's meant to be super familial. So she knows the housekeeper from when she was young. She knows Chaskey or the doorman from when she was young. She had an affair with him when she was 18. She's naughty, she's wild, she's irreverent, she smokes in the lobby. You know, it's all those things. you might not notice, but when she arrives, she actually takes off her wedding ring when she gets ready to go to the board meeting. And that's another apartment in the same building. So it had the same feeling. In fact, it was another room in one of the apartments that we shot in, but we had to decorate it very white. The woman was a ballet dancer. I really did come across a woman like that of 85 that taught ballet in an apartment building with all the residents. So it has real historic value and authenticity, and it was about matching that.
Yeah, and you can really feel the sort of the history of that apartment as well. So the walls themselves, are, as you mentioned earlier, are these really
Awful. Yeah.
dark,
Oh,
dark
yeah.
greeny grey colours, and you can almost feel the thickness of the paint, like it's been painted many, many, many layers.
Yes.
Sounds like you really did. If it was
Yeah.
white, you probably had to put.
Bright. The whole apartment was bright white. All that it had in its favor was these three interconnecting rooms and a nice wooden floor. But then all the rugs were actually from my house, the bed heads, some of the sofas, a lot of the ceramics I collect. Were all there. And then the paintings were given by a friend. So it had that real sense of a tactile patina to it, which also helps actors, by the way, because they're not faking it. They're rummaging through a box of oils and, they've got paint on their fingers and they're rummaging through it. And like when she comes in and she's lost Jacques' ring is that ring, the Tibetan ring. She kind of swans through it and the camera glides across all those beautiful bits of easels and things. And you notice that was a very big thing, is her desk was actually the mahogany table where they used to have it in the dining room. But for the first half of the film, it's filled with stuff. And for the second half, when she's there wanting to have the dance on the roof, she's cleared it all. And that's when she's put the nice ceramics, which you've seen in the kitchen before. So everything ties. I mean, it's great fun. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the kitchen we have all these like really beautiful copper pans and
Yeah.
what is your thing with kitchens, do you
I
think?
know. And by the way, that wasn't a kitchen. So Katie made that. Katie put the tiles on the wall, just zoomed the pale blue. Yeah, I'm a foodie. So I spend so much time cooking. So that's another thing that I love doing, particularly with my son. And my son's an amazing chef too. So that's when we're like, oh, what would we need so I don't want the oils all over the kitchen counter. I want a little sort of receding square bit with it. And so we're sort of, it's our dream kitchens, really.
Yeah, I was going to say completely unmodular. So lots of freestanding units, open shelves, so
Yeah,
you expose the beauty of objects rather
yeah,
than hiding them
yeah,
away.
yeah.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Kit's bedroom earlier. I mean, I can't continue actually without talking about the lighting because the shine on glassware, the sheen on the ceramics, and then we have these sort of sheer coloured curtains at the window in this room, which has, as you mentioned, the bedhead. That's your own bedhead. Amazing. So it's kind of like distressed, which is
Yeah.
really beautiful as well. Talk us through that bedroom. I just wanted to
It's
curl up.
really beautiful. It really worked, that bedroom. And in fact, what happened is when we were going on a recce looking for an apartment, we went to another really awful apartment, but it was painted that almost black. And we went, oh my God, wherever we go, let's paint the bedroom black. And that meant that the pink really came out. And then there's these two beautiful drawings. Again, it came from a friend of mine. It's her mum and dad, but it had that pinky orange.
Mhm.
And we put those on the black wall and they just popped. And then Katie came up with those beautiful pink shears on the walls. And I always wanted that shot. The beauty of this apartment is it had a courtyard. And so you were able to shoot from across one room into the other. And we were very high up. And that's where I got that lovely thing where you see Charlotte in the window and you see the gargoyles outside. So you got the outside, and I was able to get that because there was a sort of light well in the building. So you could see from one room to another the exterior. So the pink shears had to just be shears, so you still had the feeling of the masonry and the grandeur of Park Avenue. But of course, in Park Avenue, it's a very broad street, and our buildings were quite close. But anyway, I think we got away with it.
So I was going to say that memory and identity play out in the script and through the production design. Are there any films or real homes that inspired the apartment? Sounds like your own home, actually.
Yeah, I think it's really my mother's, my mother, where she sort of ended her days. Old Park Avenue apartments belonging to artists, of which they exist, and they haven't been all done up or modernized. It was really about not modernity, about keeping it so that she writes the death announcement herself. It's not printed, it's not digital. She hasn't engaged in that world yet. My sister's also a designer, and if you think I'm layered, she's like, so her apartment, and she lives in the West Village. So she lived at one point in a brownstone. So there was a sort of grandeur to that. So I think I picked these things up along the way, and if they fit, and I think really you're able to tell a story that's close to your heart probably best. So many times I think, oh, I just want to make a film like Andrea Arnold. And then I think, but I'm not from that. So I'm not entitled to, and she does it so beautifully. But I've always longed to try and put my mother's over the topness, which I always resented growing up. But now celebrate, I suppose. And at the end, this film is made for Kit, the lady I met in the park, and for Zahava, who was my mum.
I have to ask, what was your relationship like with your mum? Is there any truth in the?
It was terrible because I was everything she didn't want me to be, because she was very, very glamorous and wore amazing clothes like Kit and yellow leather. She had an orange leather suit, and I just wore jeans and a t-shirt, and she was horrified. And she put on red lipstick without ever looking in the mirror, and I never wore makeup. So we were opposites. But when she grew older and I grew older, we started to understand each other
Mhm.
and really love each other for who we were. So this what is really for her, and sadly she hasn't seen it. But anyway, she knows I've done it.
But is it time for a gold suit?
Oh, isn't that the most beautiful gold suit? I mean, that's what my mother used to look like, exactly like
Wow.
that.
Wow.
And I mean, and when Fiona tried that suit on, it was like a glove. And because not many people could carry that off, could they? She would say that she was channeling her mum as well.
Hmm.
She'd say, am I too like my own mother? I
Yeah.
get we can all be our mothers.
There are other relationships at play in Park Avenue. There's a relationship with colour, there's a relationship with light, there's a relationship with objects. Talk to us about your relationship with light and objects.
So I work with my partner who I live with, and he's the cameraman. And so we have so much time together to really explore how we're going to film something. And I think it really pays off. And I
Hmm.
think probably the work we do together is probably the best work we both do when we collaborate. And so we shot it on a really small Canon 4D camera. David chose that because of its malleability. So we were in a small apartment. So to have big equipment was really hard in such small amounts of time. But as such, we didn't have a lot of light, and we used a lot of available light. And it's just turned out really beautiful, hasn't it?
It certainly has.
And
Yeah.
I think when I said to him, I want all dark walls, I said, is that a problem? He said, no, that's perfect. Because it was very much about just lighting her and the reflection of the clothes she wore and the background that could bounce off. And I think it really helped tell the story of the light going out of someone's life, both for Fiona and for Charlotte when she discovers, wow, everything I was told as a 9-year-old was a lie. until she goes outside and she calls up her daughter and she says, I'm going to tell you everything. So it's like the claustrophobia of the interior and the only escape being almost that beautiful, huge marble, white, grand lobby, but very little exterior, you know? And even supposedly we couldn't shoot in the Carlisle, but when we did go outside and we did go to clubs, we tried to find very dark, kind of mirrored, ambient feeling atmospheres.
Was that a real club, actually? The one with William Morris wallpaper?
Yeah, that was. And it was very beautiful, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And that was a club, and I can't tell you the name of it, but it was downtown. And we had very little time, but we were very happy when we found that. And it had a beautiful bar, and her in the gold suit when she goes there, and the old ladies there. And then when he's playing, and they both go and watch him play. And Fiona just sort of goes like that and tips her glass to her daughter.
Yeah.
And, that was all real.
So just a couple of last questions. I mean, obviously your keen eye for detail is so evident and beautifully executed. What I wanted to ask is, it sounds like a lot of your own objects were actually used in the film, but if there's any piece of decor in the movie that you could take home that isn't already in your home, what might it be?
Well, there were some very beautiful photographs of black and white photographs that are to the right of her bed, kind of people lying on the bed, kind of slightly out of it, quite seductive, quite sexy. I'd probably take those, and they were really about her past, if you like. She was a cool woman that really lived, and especially with him. I think some of the ceramics, which are BBW, that are so beautiful, I do own some, but they lent us more, so I'd take them.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing all those
Thanks,
details.
Paula.
Park Avenue is out on general release on the 14th of November. Highly recommended. Thank you so much for sharing all that, Gaby.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Now, I hope you enjoyed that insightful chat. You can take a look at our in-depth feature and film set images at filmandfurniture.com, where you'll find many fascinating articles on interiors, furniture, decor and lighting in film, as well as where to find these items for your own home. That's all in our marketplace. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.